Pike ran faster than he ever had before. His lungs burned. His feet hurt. But he knew that if he stopped, the council guards would catch him. "Over there. Don't let him escape." The harsh voices of the guards echoed behind him, along with the heavy stomp of their boots. Pike clutched the small device he had stolen tightly against his chest. It wasn't much, just a simple data core from an old ship, but on his poor planet, it would fetch enough credits to feed his family for a month. The council didn't care about the device. They just wanted to make an example of anyone who dared to steal. The rocky terrain of the planet's forgotten region stretched before him. No one came here. It was forbidden. But Pike had no choice. It was either the forbidden zone or a council prison cell. Ahead, the ground sloped upward toward a strange structure half buried in the mountainside. Pike had heard stories about this place. The locals called it the Temple of the Ancient Ones. The council called it a restricted area. Most people said it was where the war gods slept. Pike didn't believe in war gods. He believed in survival. As he neared the structure, he noticed its strange shape. It wasn't like the curved, organic buildings of his people or the sharp, angular designs of the council. It was something else, solid, practical, with straight lines that somehow felt human. The word sent a chill through Pike's body. Humans were myths, stories told to frighten children. "The good or the humans will come back," mothers would tell their young. In the stories, humans were terrible warriors who fought with such skill and brutality that the entire galaxy had trembled before them. But humans had disappeared centuries ago. Some said they destroyed themselves. Others believed they simply left for another galaxy. The council said they were extinct and good riddance. Pike reached the structure's entrance, a massive metal door embedded in the rock face. Strange symbols marked its surface. He pressed his hand against it, hoping to find a way in, any way to escape the guards who were now only minutes behind him. "Please," he whispered, though he didn't know who he was talking to. "Please open." The door didn't move. Pike slammed his fist against it in desperation. Nothing happened. He could hear the guards getting closer. Then he spotted it, a small panel near the door with a faded red button. Without thinking, Pike pressed it. Again, nothing. The guards were so close now that Pike could hear their breathing. In a final, desperate move, he grabbed a rock and smashed it against the panel. The effect was immediate. A low hum vibrated through the ground. Lights that Pike hadn't even noticed began to glow along the edges of the door. A mechanical voice spoke in a language Pike didn't understand. And then, with a hiss of escaping air, the massive door slid open. Pike didn't hesitate. He darted inside just as the guards reached the top of the slope. The door slid shut behind him, cutting off their angry shouts. Inside, Pike found himself in darkness. Then, one by one, lights flickered on, revealing a long corridor stretching ahead. The walls were smooth and gray, made of some material Pike didn't recognize. The air smelled stale, as if no one had breathed it for a very long time. "Hello," Pike called, his voice echoing in the empty space. No answer came. Cautiously, he moved forward. The corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with rows of strange, coffin-like containers. Each was made of a clear material that allowed Pike to see inside. And inside each container was... Pike gasped. Inside each container was a person, or what looked like a person. They were similar to Pike's people in basic shape. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, but different in many ways. Their skin colors ranged from very dark to very light. They had hair on their heads in various colors and styles. They wore matching outfits that looked like some kind of uniform. "Humans," Pike whispered, the word feeling strange on his tongue. These weren't myths. They were real. As Pike moved among the containers, he noticed they all had small screens displaying strange symbols and numbers. They were sleeping, he realized. Not dead. Sleeping. The containers were keeping them alive somehow. A sudden loud alarm made Pike jump. Red lights began flashing throughout the chamber. The mechanical voice returned, speaking that strange language again. One of the containers in the center of the room started to glow brighter than the others. Pike watched in terror as the container's top slid open with a hiss. Cold mist poured out, spilling onto the floor. Inside, one of the humans moved. 3 days had passed since the council guards surrendered. They now sat in a makeshift holding area within the facility, treated well but kept under careful watch. Most seemed confused rather than angry. They had been raised on stories about human monsters, yet their captors offered them decent food and medical care. Pike had become something of a bridge between the humans and the outside world. His knowledge of local systems and cultures proved invaluable. "The news is spreading fast," Pike told Stone as they reviewed reports from across the sector. "The council can't keep it quiet anymore. Everyone knows the humans have returned." Stone nodded. "And how are people taking it?" "Mixed," Pike admitted. "Some are terrified. The council's propaganda machine is working overtime." He showed Stone a broadcast playing on most major channels. Dramatic images of destruction from ancient battles, with humans portrayed as unstoppable killing machines. "But others," Pike smiled. "Others see hope, especially on worlds that suffer under council rule." Reed entered the command center, followed by 2 newly awakened humans. One was a woman with intelligent eyes and an air of quiet authority. The other was a tall man who carried no weapons but moved with the same confidence as the soldiers. "Commander," Reed said, "may I introduce Dr. Mason, our chief diplomat, and Dr. Wells, head of science division." Stone greeted them both. "Perfect timing. We need your expertise." Mason studied the propaganda playing on the screen and frowned. "They're using fear, classic tactic when facing a superior force. We need to counter it," Stone said. "Show people we're not the monsters in those stories." Wells had moved to a console and was rapidly reading through data. "Fascinating. 500 years of technological development, yet in some areas, they've regressed. Military technology, advanced physics, medicine, all have stagnated or declined. The Council restricts certain technologies," Pike explained. "They say it's for safety, but really it's for control." Mason nodded thoughtfully. "So they've created a technological plateau. Advancement without empowerment." A soldier entered with urgent news. "Commander, we've detected a small vessel approaching. Not Council design. They're broadcasting on an open frequency, asking to speak with the humans." Stone looked at Pike. "Friends of yours?" Pike shook his head. "Not mine specifically, but there are many who resist the Council." "Let them approach," Stone decided, but maintained defensive readiness. An hour later, the vessel's crew stood in the facility's meeting room. There were 5 of them, each from a different species. Their leader was a tall, reptilian being named Krav. "We represent the Free Worlds Alliance," Krav explained. "We fought the Council from the shadows for decades, but we've never had the strength for open resistance. Until now," added another member, a small furry creature named Liz. "Your return changes everything." Stone listened carefully. "We're not looking to start a war. We went to sleep to avoid more bloodshed." Krav's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of emotion in his species. "The war has been ongoing for centuries. The Council wages it through economic control, resource deprivation, and targeted violence. They just don't call it war." Mason stepped forward. "We need to understand the full situation before committing to any action." For the next several hours, the Alliance members detailed the Council's rise to power, its control mechanisms, and the suffering of countless worlds under its rule. "The Council started with noble goals," Liz explained. "Protection, cooperation, advancement. But power corrupted them. Now they serve only themselves." Pike watched Stone's face as he absorbed this information. The commander's expression remained neutral, but Pike was learning to read the subtle signs of human emotion. Stone was angry, but controlling it. "We need to gather more allies," Mason said after the briefing. "Show the galaxy that humans return not as conquerors, but as liberators." Wells, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. We should also demonstrate our technological capabilities, not as threats, but as offerings. Medical advances, clean energy, agricultural improvements, things that help ordinary people. Stone nodded. Agreed. We'll open communication with all resistance groups. Share basic technologies that improve lives. Build trust. The Council won't sit idle, Reed warned. They're already moving fleets into position around known facilities. The Council chamber was massive, with high ceilings and ornate decorations that spoke of wealth and power. Delegates from 100 worlds filled the circular room, their voices creating a constant murmur that echoed off the polished walls. Stone stood with his team. Reed, Gray, Mason, Wells, and Pike, at the center of it all. They wore their formal uniforms, crisp and impressive despite being 5 centuries old. The council members sat in elevated seats arranged in tiers, looking down at them. "This is not a negotiation," the head counselor, a tall being named Drav, announced. "This is your opportunity to surrender peacefully, to return to your sleep." Mason stepped forward. "We came here in good faith, Counselor. We seek peaceful coexistence, not conflict." Drav's expression hardened. "Humans know nothing of peace. Your history is written in blood, as is the history of every spacefaring species," Mason replied calmly. "But history does not dictate future." For 3 hours, the debate continued. The Council demanded that humans return to stasis. The humans requested recognition and autonomy for all worlds under Council rule. Neither side would budge. Pike watched from the sidelines, amazed at how skillfully Mason handled the negotiations. Even when insulted or threatened, she remained composed and articulate. Then the chamber doors burst open. A group of armed council soldiers rushed in, weapons raised. "The time for talk is over," Drav announced. "You will submit or be destroyed." The human delegation didn't flinch. Stone looked at the soldiers with an expression that wasn't fear or even anger, but disappointment. "This is your answer. Violence." Stone shook his head. "We expected better." Drav smiled coldly. "You expected weakness. But the Council is not weak. While you talked peace, our fleets moved into position around every human facility. The attack begins now." Stone touched a small device on his wrist. "Commander Blackwood, are you receiving this?" A voice responded through the device. Loud and clear, "Commander Stone." "The Council has chosen war," Stone said simply. "Initiate Protocol Omega." "Understood," Blackwood replied. "All facilities report ready." "It's been an honor serving with you, Commander." The Council soldiers moved closer, weapons aimed at the human delegation. "Your facilities will be dust within the hour," Drav said triumphantly. "Your species will finally be extinct." Stone looked at him calmly. "You misunderstand Protocol Omega, Counselor. It's not a defensive measure." Suddenly, every screen in the chamber lit up with the same image. Council warships floating dead in space, their systems disabled. "What is this?" Drav demanded, rising from his seat. 500 years ago, Stone explained, we placed quantum-linked devices on every major warship design in the galaxy. They've been dormant, waiting for a signal, one we just sent. Reed continued the explanation. "Your weapons are offline. Your engines are offline. Your ships are intact, but powerless." "Impossible," Drav shouted, but the screens told a different story. Mason stepped forward again. "We didn't come here to start a war, Counselor. We came to end one. The war you've been waging against the free peoples of this galaxy." The chamber erupted in chaos. Council members shouted accusations and threats. The soldiers looked at each other uncertainly, their weapons still raised but their confidence shaken. Then a new voice cut through the noise. "Perhaps it is time we listen to what the humans have to say." The speaker was an older council member who had been silent until now. She rose slowly from her seat. "I am Counselor Talia. I have served for 60 years, and in that time, I have seen our noble institution become something I no longer recognize. She looked at her fellow council members. We were meant to serve the galaxy, not rule it. To protect, not control. Trav sneered at her. Sentiment from the old and weak. The council rules because we are strong. No, Talia countered. The council rules through fear. And as we see today, there is always someone stronger. More council members began to speak up, some in support of Talia, others backing Drav. The chamber divided itself, just as the galaxy had been divided for centuries. Stone watched it unfold, then turned to Pike. This is how change begins, not with weapons, but with words. With choice. The first council dropship exploded midair, struck by a precise shot from one of the facility's defense turrets. The remaining 4 scattered, trying to find safe landing zones beyond the weapon's range. Inside the facility, Pike watched in amazement as Reed controlled the defense systems with quick, efficient movements. Her fingers danced across the control panel as if she had used it yesterday, not 5 centuries ago. One down, she reported calmly. The others are keeping their distance now. Stone nodded. Good. We don't need to destroy them all. Just show them we can. Gray had set up a perimeter around the main entrance. Small devices floated in the air at different heights, forming an invisible barrier. Stun field ready, he said. Anyone coming through that door will take a nap. The facility shook again as the council ship in orbit fired its weapons. The mountain above them trembled, and dust fell from the ceiling. Shields holding at 72%, Reed announced. Their weapons are unimpressive. Stone smiled grimly. 500 years, and military technology has gone backward. Interesting. Pike looked between the 3 humans, confused. But the Council has the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. They can destroy entire cities. By your standards, perhaps, Stone said, but not by ours. He turned to Reed. Status of other facilities. Reed checked her console. 17 facilities have acknowledged our wake-up call. More coming online every minute. Put them on the main screen, Stone ordered. The large display at the center of the room flickered to life, splitting into multiple sections. Each showed a different human commander, some still wiping stasis fluid from their faces, others already fully alert and in control of their facilities. Commanders, Stone addressed them. We've awakened to find the galaxy under the control of an organization called the Galactic Council. They appear to be oppressive and are currently attacking our facility. The commanders listened intently. One of them, a woman with steel-gray hair, spoke up. Commander Blackwood, Facility 42. We're picking up military chatter across multiple frequencies. Your awakening has caused quite a stir. Another commander, a man with a deep scar across his cheek, added, Commander Wolf, Facility 29. We've accessed local information networks. This council has dominated the galaxy for over 300 years. Many species live under harsh conditions. Stone nodded. Then we have a decision to make. We went to sleep to avoid war. Do we wake up to start one? The room fell silent. Pike felt the weight of the moment. These humans held the power to change everything. Commander Blackwood spoke first. We swore to protect. If there are people suffering, we have a duty. Commander Wolf nodded. The sleep was never meant to be permanent. We knew someday we would be needed again. One by one, the other commanders voiced their agreement. Stone listened to each, then turned to Pike. You've seen more of this galaxy than we have. What do you think we should do? Pike hadn't expected to be asked. In his world, the powerful never sought the opinions of the weak. My people, he said slowly, and many others, have lived under the Council's boot for generations. We'd forgotten what freedom feels like. If you can help us. He paused, gathering courage. Yes, fight them. Please. Stone turned back to the screen. Then it's decided. All facilities begin full awakening procedures. Establish secure communications between facilities. Avoid direct confrontation with Council forces when possible, but defend yourselves as needed. The commanders acknowledged the orders and disconnected to carry them out. Outside, the Council forces had regrouped. The main door continued to glow red as cutting tools worked on it, but more slowly now. The guards were being cautious. They're bringing in heavier equipment, Reed reported, watching the external cameras. And the ship in orbit is calling for reinforcements. Gray checked his weapons. They'll break through eventually. Stone walked to one of the stasis pods and checked its status. How many can we safely awaken at once? Reed ran calculations. With current power levels, 50. More would risk system failure. Begin awakening procedures for combat units first, Stone ordered. We need to secure this facility. Commander, she said, spotting Stone. Situation. Captain Reed. Stone nodded. We've slept for 500 years, not 50. The galaxy has changed. There's a new power structure we need to understand. The second pod opened, and a tall, lean man sat up. His skin was dark brown, and he blinked several times as he oriented himself. Lieutenant Gray, Stone said. Good to see you awake. Gray nodded, quickly taking in the situation as he climbed out of his pod. 500 years. The backup systems must have failed. Or were sabotage, Reed suggested, already checking her pod's readings. Stone introduced Pike, who stood nervously before the three humans. Our guest has important information about the current political situation, Stone explained. And he's being hunted by the authorities. The facility shook as something heavy struck the main door. They're using explosives now, Pike said, fear in his voice. Gray moved to a weapons locker that had opened automatically when he awoke. He removed several devices that Pike didn't recognize. Non-lethal options? Gray asked, looking at Stone. Stone nodded. For now, we need information more than we need bodies. Pike had never seen people prepare for combat so calmly. In the stories, humans were frenzied berserkers who loved bloodshed. These three were methodical, professional. Reed had moved to the main control console. Commander, I've accessed the facility's sensor network. That ship in orbit is powering weapons. Can we contact the other facilities? Stone asked. Reed shook her head. Not without activating our main communication array, which would make us an even bigger target. Stone thought for a moment. We need to show strength, but not start a war. Not yet. He turned to Pike. Your council needs to understand that attacking us would be a mistake. Pike swallowed hard. You don't understand. They have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. Stone smiled for the first time. It wasn't a warm smile. And how do they compare to human soldiers? Before Pike could answer, a screen lit up with a message. It showed a council official in full ceremonial uniform. Attention unknown facility, the official said. This is Counselor Vex of the Galactic Council. You are in violation of restricted zone protocol. Surrender immediately or face orbital bombardment. Stone straightened his uniform and stepped before the screen. This is Commander Stone of the United Earth Defense Force. This facility and all others like it across the galaxy are sovereign territory of humanity. Any attack will be considered an act of war. The counselor's face showed shock that quickly turned to anger. Humanity is extinct. Whatever you are, your deception will not. Stone cut the transmission. They'll attack within minutes, he said calmly. Reed, activate minimum defensive measures. Gray, prepare for visitors. Reed pressed a sequence of buttons. Outside, hidden defense turrets emerged from the mountainside. Defensive shields at 80%, Reed reported. Weapons online. The facility shook again, harder this time. The door began to glow red where the cutting tools worked. They're almost through, Pike said, backing away from the entrance. Stone put a hand on Pike's shoulder. Don't worry. You've awakened us for a reason. The galaxy needed us again, even if it doesn't know it yet. A massive explosion rocked the facility. The door held, but barely. Council dropships incoming, Reed called out. 5 of them, heavy assault class. Stone looked at Pike. You said the Council oppresses your people. Pike nodded. And many others. Stone's expression hardened. Then it seems we have a purpose again. He turned to Reed and Gray. Initiate contact with all facilities. Priority message. The sleep is over. Humanity has returned. As alarms blared and the 3 humans prepared for battle, Pike realized that the war gods had indeed awakened. But perhaps they weren't the monsters of legend. Perhaps they were something the galaxy needed even more. Liberators. Commander Stone moved with growing confidence as his body remembered how to function. His muscles had been preserved by the stasis technology, but they felt stiff after centuries of disuse. Each step became stronger than the last. Pike watched him with wide eyes. The stories had always described humans as monsters, as killing machines with unnatural strength and deadly skill. But Stone looked normal. Powerful, yes, but not the demon from childhood tales. How long? Stone asked again, checking the facility systems. How long have we been asleep? Pike shuffled his feet nervously. The stories say humans disappeared over 500 years ago. Stone froze. 500 years. His voice was quiet but filled with shock. It was supposed to be 50, 100 at most. The pounding at the door grew louder. The council guards had brought heavier equipment. They'll break through eventually, Pike said. The council has technology that can cut through almost anything. Stone's eyes narrowed. Tell me about this council while I work. As Stone moved from panel to panel, checking systems and reading data, Pike explained how the Galactic Council had risen to power after the human disappearance. How they had started as peacekeepers but became rulers. How they controlled trade, travel, and information across thousands of worlds. They say they protect us, Pike said bitterly. But they just control us. My people can barely afford to eat because of their taxes and rules. Stone nodded, taking it all in. He pressed a button, and a holographic map of the galaxy appeared in the center of the room. Thousands of tiny lights blinked across it. Each light is a facility like this one, Stone explained, placed on remote worlds, hidden away, each containing between 1,000 and 5,000 human soldiers. Pike asked. There must be millions. 3,400,000, to be exact, Stone said. The best fighters Earth had to offer. We fought in the last war until there was nothing left to fight for. Why did you go to sleep? Pike asked. Stone's face darkened. Because we were tired of war. Because we had become too good at it. The last war nearly destroyed a dozen civilizations. We won, but the cost. He shook his head. We voted to remove ourselves from the galaxy until we were needed again. Until we could be more than just destroyers. An alert sounded from one of the panels. Stone checked it and frowned. Your council friends have called for backup. There's a warship entering orbit. Pike felt his legs weaken. They'll bomb this whole area if they have to. The council doesn't take chances with things they don't understand. Stone pressed more buttons, and screens showed different views of the facility's exterior. The guards had set up a perimeter and were working on the door with cutting tools that sent showers of sparks flying. This facility has defensive capabilities, Stone said, but activating them would mean declaring war on your council. I need to be sure that's the right choice. He turned to Pike, his eyes intense. Are there others like you? People who suffer under council rule? Pike nodded quickly. Most people do. The council only helps the rich worlds, the ones with resources they want. The rest of us are left to struggle. Stone seemed to make a decision. He walked to another control panel and placed his palm on a scanner. DNA verified, said the mechanical voice. Commander Stone, clearance level Alpha. Emergency awakening protocol authorized. 2 more of the stasis pods began to glow. The tops slid open, releasing the same cold mist that had accompanied Stone's awakening. What are you doing? Pike asked, stepping back. Waking up my command team, Stone replied. I need their expertise. From the first pod, a woman emerged. She was shorter than Stone, but moved with the same precision. Her red hair was cut short, and her eyes scanned the room instantly, assessing threats. Let them come, Gray said. Our defenses can hold. Stone looked troubled. We don't want a direct confrontation if we can avoid it. Not yet. As if on cue, an alert sounded. Reed checked the systems and frowned. Commander, we've detected an infiltration attempt. Someone's inside the facility's ventilation system. Security screens showed a small figure crawling through the narrow passages. An assassin, Gray said grimly. Targeting you, most likely. Stone didn't seem concerned. Capture only, he ordered. No harm. Gray dispatched a team, and within minutes they returned with their captive. A slender, gray-skinned being who struggled against restraints that easily held him. Council Special Operations, Krav identified the captive. They're elite killers. The assassin glared at Stone with hatred. Monster, he spat. We know what you did to the old worlds. The destruction you caused. We won't let it happen again. Stone approached the captive calmly. What's your name? The assassin remained silent. I'm not going to hurt you, Stone said. None of us will. Lies. The assassin hissed. Humans only know destruction. Stone signaled to the guards. Take him to the medical bay. Full treatment for any injuries, then secure detention. The assassin looked confused as he was led away. Why not kill me? That's what humans do. You kill. Not anymore, Stone said quietly. After the assassin was gone, Krav turned to Stone. Your mercy will be seen as weakness by the Council. Perhaps, Stone acknowledged. But how we treat our enemies defines who we are. Later that day, a message arrived from a Council splinter faction, a group of officials who disagreed with the hardline approach of the main Council. They want to talk, Mason reported, reviewing the message. This could be our opening for peaceful resolution. Pike wasn't convinced. It could also be a trap. Stone considered this. We'll meet them, but with precautions. And in the meantime, we continue building our coalition. Over the next few days, representatives from dozens of worlds visited the facility. Some came out of curiosity, others out of hope, a few out of fear. All left with the same impression. These humans were powerful, yes, but also thoughtful and measured. Pike found himself increasingly involved in the diplomatic efforts. His simple explanations of complex situations proved valuable in building trust. You've become quite the ambassador, Stone told him one evening. Pike smiled. I was a thief when I met you. Now I'm helping reshape the galaxy. Funny how things change. Stone looked out at the stars visible through the facility's viewport. Change is what we needed. What the galaxy needed. Not more war, but a new balance. A message alert interrupted them. Reed's voice came over the comm system. Commander, all facilities report ready status. We now have over 1 million humans awake and operational across the galaxy. Stone's expression turned serious. Then it's time for the next phase. The Council has called for a formal meeting. They want to negotiate. Pike felt a mix of hope and worry. Can they be trusted? No, Stone said simply. But neither can we ignore the chance for peace. He turned to Pike. The war gods have awakened, but perhaps we don't need to be gods of war anymore. Perhaps we can be something better. Across the galaxy, humans were forming alliances, sharing knowledge, building bridges. The slumbering giants had awakened not to conquer, but to connect. And the galaxy would never be the same again. As Reed worked, Pike moved closer to Stone. The stories about humans. They say you could fight armies single-handed, that you could breathe fire and eat metal. Stone laughed. Exaggerations. We're tough, well-trained, and had better technology than most. But we're not gods. Just soldiers who got too good at our job. A new alarm sounded. Reed checked her console and frowned. The Council ship is broadcasting a message to the entire sector. They're telling everyone that dangerous ancient weapons have been activated, and to avoid this area. "Let me hear it," Stone said. Reed put it on the speakers. A stern voice filled the room. "Attention all citizens. This is an emergency broadcast from the Galactic Council. Ancient weapons of mass destruction have been activated in Sector 7. All civilian vessels must avoid this area. Military reinforcements are en route. Remain calm and follow all Council directives." Stone shook his head. "Already painting us as mindless weapons. Predictable." Gray looked up from his work. "It might work in our favor. Fear can be useful. Fear can also unite people against us," Stone countered. "We need to show that we're not the monsters they think we are." Pike had an idea. "The Council controls all major communication networks, but there are underground channels. If you could broadcast a message." Stone considered this. "A good thought. Reed, can you tap into these underground networks?" Reed studied her console. "Given time, yes, but we need to know where to look." Pike stepped forward. "I can help with that. I know people who use them." Before Stone could respond, Gray called out a warning. "They're through the first layer of the door. 2 minutes until breach." The 50 stasis pods Reed had activated began to open. Men and women emerged, instantly alert despite their long sleep. They moved with the same efficiency as Stone, Reed, and Gray, quickly arming themselves and taking defensive positions. Stone addressed them briefly, explaining the situation. They accepted the news of their 500-year sleep with remarkable calm. "Council forces will breach the main entrance in approximately 2 minutes, Stone told them. "Non-lethal response only. We want prisoners, not bodies." The soldiers acknowledged the orders and prepared. Pike watched in awe. These weren't mindless berserkers. They were disciplined, coordinated, and focused. For the first time since he'd stumbled into this facility, he felt real hope. The door began to give way. Metal groaned and sparked as the Council's cutting tools finally broke through. "Get ready," Stone said, drawing a weapon that Pike didn't recognize. It looked too small to be dangerous, but Pike had learned not to underestimate these humans. With a final screech of metal, the door fell inward. Council guards rushed in, weapons raised. They froze at the sight that greeted them. 50 human soldiers in perfect formation, weapons ready but not firing. Stone stepped forward. "Welcome to humanity's home. I suggest you surrender." The lead guard looked at the humans, then at his own forces. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. Across the galaxy, in hidden facilities on distant worlds, more stasis pods were opening. More humans were awakening. The gods of war had risen. But perhaps they had returned not to destroy, but to rebuild. A hand gripped the edge of the container, then another. The human pulled itself up to a sitting position. It was tall, with broad shoulders and short dark hair. Its eyes opened, revealing a sharp, alert gaze that immediately fixed on Pike. Pike wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He was face to face with a war god. The human spoke. The words were strange, but somehow Pike understood them. Later, he would learn about the translation technology built into the facility, but at that moment, it seemed like magic. "Who are you?" the human asked, voice rough from long disuse. "And why have you awakened me?" Pike swallowed hard. "I'm Pike. I didn't mean to wake you. I was just trying to hide." The human climbed out of the container, moving stiffly at first, then with increasing steadiness. Pike decided, wore a uniform with strange symbols on the chest and shoulders. He was taller than Pike by at least a head. "Hide from what?" the human asked. "Council guards. They wanted to arrest me." The human frowned. "Council? What council?" "The Galactic Council. They control everything now." The human seemed to process this information. Then he straightened his back and said, "I am Commander Stone, United Earth Defense Force." He looked around at the other containers, still sealed with their occupants sleeping inside. "How long have we been asleep?" Before Pike could answer, a heavy pounding shook the main door. The council guards had found a way to follow him. "They're coming in," Pike said, panic rising in his voice. Commander Stone's expression hardened. He walked to a wall panel and pressed several buttons. Screens lit up, showing the outside of the facility where a dozen council guards were setting up what looked like cutting equipment. "They won't get through easily," Stone said. "This facility was built to withstand orbital bombardment." He turned back to Pike. "But I need to know what's happening out there. How long have humans been gone? What is this council? Why are they after you?" Pike hesitated, then held out the data cord he had stolen. "I just took this. They want to punish me." Stone took the device, examined it briefly, then handed it back. "That's not why I'm asking. I need to understand what kind of world we're waking up to." Pike looked at the sleeping humans, thousands of them, each a legendary warrior. "If you wake them all up," he said, "everything will change." Stone's eyes met Pike's. "Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen." He turned to a larger control panel. "It's time the galaxy remembered who we are." Outside, the guards began to cut through the ancient door, unaware that they weren't just breaking into a forgotten relic. They were waking the sleeping giant. The debate raged for hours. Outside the chamber, news spread across the galaxy. Humans had returned, and the Council's fleets were powerless. On thousands of worlds, people waited to learn what would happen next. Finally, a vote was called. When it was done, Drav and his supporters stormed out of the chamber, promising retribution. But they were now the minority. Talia approached the human delegation. "We have much to discuss, Commander Stone. A new framework for cooperation. A true galactic council, not an empire in disguise." Stone nodded. "That's why we came." The negotiations that followed lasted days. Representatives from previously ignored worlds were invited to participate. The Free Worlds Alliance joined the discussions. New systems of governance were proposed and debated. Pike found himself speaking for his people, something he never imagined possible. From thief to representative, it still felt unreal. "You've come far from the scared young man who broke into our facility," Stone told him one evening. Pike smiled. "The galaxy has come far too." 3 weeks after the Council Chamber confrontation, the new Galactic Charter was signed. Power would be shared. Resources would be distributed more fairly. Technology would be used to improve lives, not control them. And the humans, they would neither rule nor sleep, but stand as equals among the stars. On the final day of negotiations, Pike stood with Stone on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Below them, people of a dozen different species moved through the streets, going about their lives in a world already beginning to change. "Why did you really go to sleep?" Pike asked suddenly. "The real reason." Stone was quiet for a moment. "Because we were afraid of what we were becoming. In the last war, we won every battle, but we were losing ourselves. We chose to remove ourselves until the galaxy needed protectors, not conquerors. And now we have a second chance to be better than we were." A group of children played in a park below, different species together, without fear or prejudice. "The old stories will change," Pike said. "New ones will be told. Not about war gods, but about I don't know what." "That's the beautiful thing," Stone replied. "We get to decide what those stories will be." As the twin suns set on the horizon, casting the city in golden light, Pike thought about how it all began, with a desperate thief kicking open a forbidden door. Sometimes change came from the most unexpected places. The war gods had awakened, but they had chosen not to wage war. Instead, they had brought something the galaxy needed much more: hope and a new dawn. The great void of space lit up as another planet's defense systems failed. From the command deck of his massive warship, Overlord Krell watched with cold eyes as the blue-green world's orbital platforms crumbled under his fleet's gravitational weapons. He did not smile. There was no satisfaction in crushing bugs. "Another victory, Overlord," said his second-in-command. That makes the 47th system this cycle. Krell merely nodded. The Variant Dominion had conquered thousands of star systems over centuries without facing any real challenge. Their pattern was simple: arrive, demand surrender, show their power, then take over. Most worlds gave up after the first demonstration. Those that didn't were made examples of. Prepare the integration teams, Krell ordered, and set course for the next system, the Sol system, Overlord, with the species called humans. Yes, our scouts report primitive technology. Though they have achieved basic space travel, they will fall like all the others. Jack Mason stared out the viewport of the UES Defiant as Earth grew smaller behind them. At 42, his dark hair was starting to gray at the temples, but his eyes remained sharp and alert. After 20 years in the United Earth Space Force, this was his first command of a ship this important. "Captain, all systems are running at optimal levels," said the ship's AI system, VGJ, its calm voice filling the bridge. "Thank you, VGA," Mason replied, turning to face his crew. "How's our new drive holding up, Reed?" Engineer Talia Reed looked up from her station, pushing a strand of red hair from her face. "The experimental drive is stable, Captain, but I still don't trust it for more than a few light jumps without maintenance." Mason nodded. The Defiant was Earth's newest warship, built with technology that humans had developed on their own, plus some reverse-engineered from pieces of alien ships found over the years. It was the pride of the fleet, but still untested in real combat. "Lieutenant Bell, how are our weapons systems?" Mason asked. Marcus Bell, a young officer with steady hands and a calm demeanor, tapped at his console. "All weapons ready, sir. The new pulse cannons are charged at 100%. "And our guest?" Mason asked, turning to the final member of his bridge crew. Dr. Emma Wilson, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from her datapad. "Still unconscious, Captain. The medical bay is keeping him stable, but I can't say when he'll wake up." Their guest was the reason for their mission. 3 days ago, a small alien ship had crashed on the moon. Inside was a badly injured alien, the first confirmed contact with intelligent life from beyond the solar system. Before falling unconscious, the alien had managed to transmit a single message: "They are coming. The Variant. Run." Earth's governments had argued for days about what to do. Some wanted to prepare for war, others for surrender, still others claimed it was all a trick. In the end, they decided to send the Defiant to the edge of the solar system to investigate. "Captain," VGA's voice broke into Mason's thoughts, "I'm detecting an anomaly at the edge of the system, just beyond Pluto's orbit." "On screen," Mason ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, showing empty space. Then a swirl of light appeared, growing larger. "Some kind of portal, sir," Bell said, his voice tight. "I've never seen anything like it." "Dr. Wilson." Mason turned to the scientist. She shook her head, eyes wide. "This matches nothing in our databases, Captain, but the energy readings are off the charts." The swirling light expanded, and then ships began to emerge. First one, then 5, then dozens. They were massive, sleek vessels with designs unlike anything humans had built, all curves and flowing lines, as if grown rather than constructed. "VEGA, count those ships," Mason ordered, his mouth suddenly dry. "I am detecting 76 large vessels and 143 smaller craft, Captain. Based on their size and energy signatures, they appear to be warships." The bridge fell silent. Earth's entire fleet consisted of just 31 ships, most of them smaller than the Defiant. "Orders, sir," Bell asked quietly. Mason took a deep breath. "Keep us at this distance. Let's observe for now. Reed, make sure our stealth systems are at maximum." "Already on it, Captain." As they watched, the alien armada arranged itself into a perfect formation and began moving toward the inner solar system, toward Earth. The ship's communication system suddenly came to life with a weak transmission. "This is Refugee Ship Talmer, to Earth Vessel. The Variant have arrived. Must warn. Never surrender. That's coming from our medical bay, Reed said. The aliens awake. Dr. Wilson, get down there, Mason ordered. Find out everything you can. 10 minutes later, Dr. Wilson's face appeared on the bridge screen, her expression grim. Captain, our guest is named Kelvar. His world was conquered by the Variant 3 months ago. He says they've taken over thousands of star systems without ever losing a battle. What do they want? Mason asked. Everything. Resources, technology, labor. They consider all other species inferior. They offer surrender before attacking, but the terms are always the same: complete submission or complete destruction. Mason looked back at the screen showing the approaching armada. How do they do it? How have they never been defeated? Their weapons manipulate gravity itself, Wilson explained. They can crush warships, defense stations, even city shields from a distance. No known species has found a defense against it. Captain, VEGA interrupted. The alien fleet has accelerated. At current speed, they will reach Earth in approximately 72 hours. Mason stood up, his decision made. We're returning to Earth immediately. The governments need to know what we're facing. As the Defiant turned back toward Earth, Mason looked again at the alien armada. Humanity had faced many challenges in its history, but nothing like this. How could Earth possibly stand against an enemy that had conquered galaxies without effort? Then he looked at his crew, Ree with her brilliant engineering mind, Bell with his steady tactical skills, Wilson with her scientific curiosity, and VEGA with its lightning-fast calculations. Maybe, just maybe, humans had something the other conquered species didn't. VEGA, send a message to Earth Command, Mason said. Tell them we're coming home with critical information and to prepare for the fight of our lives. As the Defiant raced back toward Earth, the unstoppable tide of the Variant Dominion followed behind them, unaware that this small blue planet might be different from all the others they had conquered. The emergency meeting room of Earth's United Defense Council was filled with raised voices and fear. On the main screen, the images of the Variant fleet that the Defiant had captured played on a loop. 76 massive warships against Earth's small fleet of 31. We should surrender immediately, shouted the representative from the Asian Alliance. You heard Captain Mason's report. These aliens have never been defeated and become slaves, countered the North American leader. We've never bowed to tyrants before. Captain Jack Mason stood silent at the back of the room, watching the argument go back and forth. Next to him, Engineer Reed fidgeted with a small device in her hands. A nervous habit. They're missing the point, she whispered to Mason. It doesn't matter if we fight or surrender. The Variant will take what they want either way. The Council's head admiral finally raised her hand for silence. Captain Mason, you've heard the alien refugees' story. What do you recommend? All eyes turned to him. Mason stepped forward, feeling the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. We need more information, he said firmly. The Defiant can approach the Variant fleet and attempt communication. Maybe we can negotiate better terms than other species have received, or at least buy us some time to prepare, Reed added. After more heated debate, the Council agreed. The Defiant would make first contact while Earth prepared whatever defenses it could. 12 hours later, the Defiant waited at the edge of the asteroid belt. The massive Variant fleet had stopped there, as if taking time to study the inner planets. VEGA, are you detecting any communications from their fleet? Mason asked. Yes, Captain. They are broadcasting on all frequencies in a language I don't recognize. However, I am detecting universal translation patterns. I believe they are attempting to communicate. Open a channel, Mason ordered. Let's introduce ourselves. The main screen lit up, showing an alien face. The Variant looked vaguely reptilian, with gray-blue skin and large yellow eyes. Multiple small tentacles framed its face like a beard. I am Overlord Krell of the Variant Dominion, the alien said in perfect English, its voice deep and emotionless. You will surrender your planet, and all resources to us immediately. Mason stood tall. I am Captain Jack Mason of the United Earth Space Force. We wish to discuss terms that would benefit both our species. The alien's yellow eyes narrowed. There are no terms, human. There is only surrender or destruction. You have 24 of your Earth hours to decide. Before Mason could respond, the transmission ended. Well, that went well, said Lieutenant Bell from his tactical station, his voice heavy with sarcasm. Dr. Wilson studied her datapad. This matches exactly what Kelvar told us. They make the same demand to every species. Mason turned to Reed. What do you think, engineer? Any weaknesses you can spot in their ships? Reed shook her head. Not from this distance. We need to get closer. Mason nodded. Then that's what we'll do. The Defiant moved quietly toward the massive Variant command ship. They were using every stealth technology they had, hoping to gather information without being detected. Captain, VGA said suddenly, a group of Variant ships is breaking formation and heading toward Jupiter's moon Europa. Follow them, Mason ordered. But keep your distance. They watched as 5 Variant ships approached Europa, where a small human research station housed 30 scientists. The station had been warned and evacuated, but its automated systems were still running. What are they doing? Dr. Wilson asked, leaning forward to see the screen better. The answer came a moment later. The lead Variant ship seemed to shimmer, and then a beam of distorted space shot toward the station. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The entire structure crumpled like paper, folding in on itself until nothing remained but twisted metal. My God, whispered Bell. The gravitational weapons. VEGA, were you able to record that? Mason asked, his voice tight. Yes, Captain. Full sensor readings captured. Captain, Reed shouted suddenly. They've detected us. 3 ships are changing course, heading right for us. Mason made a quick decision. Full power to engines. Get us out of here. The Defiant turned and accelerated away from the Variant ships. But they were gaining fast. They're charging weapons, Bell reported. Evasive maneuvers, Mason ordered. The ship lurched to the side just as space distorted where they had been a moment before. A second shot grazed their hull, causing the entire ship to vibrate violently. Damage report, Mason called out. Reed studied her console. Minor damage to the outer hull, but our shields are failing. Captain, we can't take a direct hit from those weapons. I know, Mason said grimly. VEGA, plot an emergency jump back to Earth. As the Defiant prepared to jump, Reed's eyes widened, staring at her readings. Captain, I'm seeing something strange in the Variant weapon signature. There's a pattern to the gravitational distortion. It's not random. Save that data, Mason ordered. We'll study it when we're safe. The Defiant's experimental drive engaged, and the ship disappeared just as another Variant shot passed through the space they had occupied. Back at Earth, Mason presented the Council with the Defiant's findings. The room was silent as they watched the footage of Europa's research station being crushed. Their power is, beyond anything we have, the European representative said finally, her voice shaking. But not beyond understanding, Reed said, stepping forward. She projected a series of complex readings. Their weapons create a specific gravitational pattern before firing. If we could generate an opposing pattern. You're talking about creating a counter-gravitational field, asked the head scientist of the Council. That's theoretically possible, but we've never been able to control gravity at that level. Reed smiled slightly. The Defiant's experimental drive works by manipulating gravity on a small scale. If we could modify it. Mason finished her thought. We might be able to defend against their main weapon. The Council exchanged looks of cautious hope. How long would these modifications take? The Admiral asked. With full resources and no interruptions. 48 hours, Reed answered. But the Variant gave us only 24 hours to surrender, the Asian representative pointed out. Mason's face hardened. Then I'll go back out there and buy us more time. How? Someone asked. By giving the variant something they've never encountered before, Mason replied. Resistance. As the council began to argue again, Mason pulled his core crew aside. Reed, start the modifications now. Bell, work with VEGA on tactical scenarios. Dr. Wilson, learn everything you can from Kelvar about variant biology. What are you planning, Captain? Wilson asked. Mason looked at each of them, his eyes determined. I'm planning to show the variant that they finally found a species that won't just roll over and die. As the crew of the Defiant rushed to prepare, the variant fleet moved closer to Earth, their victory seemingly assured as it had been thousands of times before. But for the first time, they were about to face something unexpected. Human determination. The clock was ticking. 23 hours had passed since the variant ultimatum, and Earth was in chaos. Some people fled to underground shelters, while others looked to the sky with weapons in hand. Most simply held their loved ones close, waiting. On the Defiant, no one had slept. Engineer Reed's hands were covered in burns and cuts as she worked furiously on the shield modifications. Captain Mason entered the engine room, carrying 2 cups of coffee. How's it coming? He asked, handing her a cup. Reed took it gratefully. The theory is solid. The variant weapons create a gravity well that crushes everything in its path. If we can generate a counterfield that inverts the gravitational wave. She pointed to a new device connected to the ship's main shield generator. Will it work? Mason asked directly. Reed gave a tired smile. Only one way to find out. The ship's intercom came alive with VGA's calm voice. Captain, the variant are moving. 3 of their ships have destroyed our Mars colony. Mason's face hardened. They're starting their show of force, just like Kelvar warned us. Earth had refused to respond to the surrender demand. Now the variant would begin destroying outer colonies one by one until Earth gave in, or was destroyed. How much longer do you need? Mason asked Reed. The modifications are finished, but this shield inverter is completely untested. VDGA ran simulations, but what did the simulations show? Mason pressed. Reed hesitated. If it works, we can repel their gravitational attacks. If it fails, the backlash could tear the Defiant apart. Mason nodded. And how many times can we use it? 3, maybe 4 times before the system burns out completely. The power requirements are enormous. Mason helped Reed to her feet. Then we'll make those 3 or 4 times count. On the bridge, Lieutenant Bell and Dr. Wilson were waiting with grim faces. The variant have destroyed the lunar mining facilities, Bell reported. Thousands dead. And they've sent another message, Wilson added. They say this is just a small demonstration of their power. Mason took his command chair. Are all systems ready? As ready as they'll ever be, Reed said from her station. VEGA, status of the shield inverter. The shield inverter is online, Captain. However, I must warn you that there is a 62% chance of critical failure upon first use. Mason took a deep breath. Noted. Set course for the variant command ship. The bridge fell silent. Finally, Bell spoke up. Sir, we're going to attack them directly. Not attack, Mason corrected. Demonstrate. The variant think we're helpless. Let's show them they're wrong. As the Defiant broke orbit and accelerated toward the variant fleet, Mason addressed the crew through the ship-wide comm. This may be the most important mission any human ship has ever undertaken. We face an enemy that has never known defeat. But today, that changes. Today, we show them that humans don't surrender easily. On the bridge of his massive command ship, Overlord Krell was surprised when his second-in-command reported a single Earth vessel approaching. One ship? Krell asked, his yellow eyes narrowing. They send one ship against our fleet. Yes, Overlord. It appears to be the same vessel that observed us at Europa. Krell made a sound that might have been laughter. These humans are either very brave or very stupid. Bring it on screen. The image of the Defiant appeared, small and seemingly fragile against the backdrop of space. "Open a channel," Krell ordered. "I wish to speak to these fools before I destroy them." Captain Mason's face appeared on the screen. "This is Captain Jack Mason of the UES Defiant." "Captain Mason," Krell said with cold amusement, "you have ignored our ultimatum. Now you approach our fleet with a single ship. Explain this behavior." "I've come to negotiate," Mason replied calmly. "The time for negotiation has passed," Krell said. "Your colonies are already burning. Soon your homeworld will follow." "Before you continue," Mason said, "I thought you might want to see something." He nodded to someone off-screen. Krell gestured to his weapons officer. "Enough of this. Target their ship with a low-power gravitational pulse. Let them feel what awaits their planet." The Variant weapons officer obeyed, sending a gravitational beam toward the human ship. What happened next made every Variant on the bridge freeze in shock. The beam hit the Defiant and bounced back. The Variant ship shuddered as its own gravitational attack was reflected back, damaging one of its weapon arrays. "Impossible," Krell roared. "No species has ever deflected our weapons." On the Defiant, the bridge crew cheered as the shield inverter worked perfectly. "It worked," Reed shouted, checking her readings. "Shield inverter at 78% capacity after one use. 2 or 3 more shots before burnout," Mason noted. "Let's make them count. Bell, target their damaged weapon array. Fire pulse cannons." The Defiant's main weapons fired, striking the already damaged section of the Variant ship. It wasn't enough to destroy the massive vessel, but it caused visible damage. "Captain," VEGA reported, "the Variant fleet is repositioning. 12 ships are moving to surround us." Mason smiled. "They're taking us seriously now." "Reed, how's the inverter holding up?" "Ready for another round, but I don't know if we can handle 12 ships at once." Mason nodded. "We don't have to. We've shown what we came to show. Bell, plot an escape course." The Defiant turned and accelerated away from the Variant fleet. Behind them, Krell was ordering all ships to pursue the human vessel that had done the impossible. "They're all following us," Bell reported. "All 76 ships." "Good," Mason said. "That means they're not attacking Earth." Reed looked up from her console. "Captain, I've been thinking. The shield inverter works, but it has limited uses. If we could find a way to amplify the effect." "What are you suggesting?" Mason asked. "Our experimental drive works by manipulating gravity. If we could modify it to produce the same kind of inversion effect, but on a larger scale, we could create a weapon against their entire fleet," Mason finished. "It's risky," Reed warned. "We'd essentially be overloading the drive. It could destroy us in the process." Mason looked at his crew. Reed with her brilliant mind, Bell with his steady hands, Wilson with her scientific curiosity, and VEGA with its perfect calculations. Then he thought of Earth, waiting, hoping. "Begin the modifications," he ordered. "Let's give the Variant something they'll never forget." As the Defiant raced through space with the entire Variant fleet in pursuit, for the first time in centuries, Overlord Krell felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. These humans were different. They had done what no other species had managed. They had stood against the Variant and survived. The hunt was on, but no longer was the outcome certain. The unstoppable tide of the Variant had met its first obstacle, and that obstacle was human ingenuity. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Defend Earth at all costs." Earth's remaining fleet, 29 ships of various sizes, formed a defensive line between the planet and the approaching Variant armada. Against the 76 massive alien warships, they looked like toys. The Defiant raced back toward Earth, the entire Variant fleet in pursuit. Inside the engine room, Reed worked frantically to modify the experimental drive, while Mason coordinated with Earth's defenders. "Admiral Chen, this is Captain Mason. We've discovered a weakness in the Variant weapons, but we need time to exploit it." "How much time, Captain?" came the response. Mason looked at Reed, who held up 4 fingers. 4 hours, Admiral. There was a pause before Chen responded. We'll give you as much time as we can. But hurry, Mason. We won't last long against their weapons. Mason turned to Dr. Wilson. What have you learned from Kelvar about variant biology? Wilson brought up a detailed scan on her tablet. The variant have an unusual nervous system that's sensitive to certain radiation frequencies. Specifically, their command neurons can be temporarily disrupted by pulses in the delta epsilon range. Can we generate that kind of radiation? Mason asked. Not normally, Wilson answered. But if Engineer Reed's modifications work, the drive could produce a massive pulse at exactly that frequency. And what would that do to them? It wouldn't kill them, but it might temporarily disable their biological components. Most of their technology seems to be biomechanical, partly living tissue. Mason nodded. So we might be able to disable their ships without destroying them. In theory, yes, Wilson confirmed. But we'd have to get close, very close, to their command ship for the pulse to affect their entire fleet. Their ships are networked together. Lieutenant Bell spoke up from his tactical station. Captain, the first variant ships are engaging Earth's fleet. The main screen showed the desperate battle beginning. Earth's ships fired everything they had, but their weapons barely scratched the variant vessels. Then the aliens responded with their gravitational weapons. 2 human ships crumpled instantly. We need to draw their fire away from Earth, Mason said. VEJ, plot a course through the variant fleet. We'll make ourselves the target. That's suicide, Captain, Bell protested. Not if we use the shield inverter, Mason replied. How many charges do we have left, Reed? Just 2, she answered without looking up from her work. And the second one will probably burn out the entire system. Then we'll make them count, Mason decided. Bell, take us in. Full speed. The Defiant raced toward the battle, its engines straining. As they approached, Mason broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Mason of the UES, Defiant to Overlord Krell. We're the ones you want. Come and get us. The tactic worked. Several variant ships broke off their attack on Earth's fleet and turned toward the Defiant. They're taking the bait, Bell reported. 6 ships heading our way. Get ready with the shield inverter, Mason ordered. The first variant ship fired its gravitational weapon. The Defiant's shield inverter activated, reflecting the attack back. The alien ship shuddered as its own weapon struck it. Inverter at 45% capacity, Reed reported from engineering. 1 more shot, Captain, then we're defenseless. Make it a good one, Mason replied. VEJ, identify the most vulnerable variant ship and take us close. VEGA guided the Defiant toward a variant vessel that showed signs of damage. The alien ship fired, and once again the shield inverter reflected the attack. This time, the variant ship's hull cracked open, venting atmosphere into space. Shield inverter is completely burned out, Reed announced. But I've almost finished the drive modifications. 20 more minutes. We don't have 20 minutes, Bell warned as more variant ships surrounded them. The Defiant shook violently as a glancing hit from a gravitational weapon damaged its port side. Hull breach in sections 12 through 15, VEGA reported. Emergency bulkheads holding. Another hit rocked the ship. Engine power dropping, Bell called out. We can't take much more of this. Mason made a quick decision. VEGA, set a course for Saturn's rings. We'll use them for cover while Reed finishes the modifications. The Defiant turned and accelerated toward Saturn, taking more hits as it fled. Pieces of the hull were torn away, but the ship kept going. Captain, VEGA said suddenly, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup in 3 variant ships. They appear to be combining their gravitational weapons for a single powerful shot. Evasive maneuvers, Mason ordered. The Defiant swerved, but the massive gravitational beam caught the ship's rear section. The entire vessel shuddered and alarms blared everywhere. Direct hit to the engine section, VEGA reported. Critical damage to all systems. In engineering, Reed was thrown across the room as consoles exploded around her. Lieutenant Bell raced to help her, pushing aside fallen debris. "Reed, are you okay?" She nodded weakly, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. "The drive modifications, almost complete, but the control systems are damaged. Someone needs to manually connect the final circuits." Bell looked at the exposed drive core, now pulsing with dangerous energy. "Where?" Reed pointed to a small access panel near the core. "In there, but the radiation levels are lethal. Whoever does it won't survive." Bell nodded grimly. "Get back to the bridge. Tell the captain I've got this." Bell, "No. Go," he ordered, already moving toward the access panel. "This is our only chance." On the bridge, Mason watched helplessly as Earth's fleet was being decimated. Only 7 ships remained, and they were falling quickly. Reed stumbled onto the bridge, her face streaked with blood and tears. "Reed, what happened? Where's Bell?" He's connecting the final circuits manually," she said, her voice breaking. "The radiation will kill them, but it was the only way." Before Mason could respond, the ship lurched as the experimental drive surged with power. "Captain," VGA announced, "Lieutenant Bell has successfully completed the modifications. The drive is ready to generate the radiation pulse, but we must get closer to the Variant command ship for maximum effect." Mason closed his eyes briefly, honoring Bell's sacrifice. Then he looked at his remaining crew. "Let's make sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain." VEGA set a direct course for Krell's command ship. Full remaining power, the damaged Defiant turned and accelerated toward the massive Variant command ship at the center of the fleet. More hits landed, tearing away at what remained of the human vessel. On the Variant command ship, Overlord Krell watched the approaching human vessel with growing concern. Why would the damaged ship head directly toward them? What were these humans planning? "Overlord," his second-in-command said nervously, "the human ship is on a collision course. Their engines are showing unusual energy readings." For the first time in his long life, Krell felt fear. "Destroy them," he roared. "All ships, focus fire on that vessel." The Defiant was now barely holding together, systems failing throughout the ship. But it kept moving forward, straight toward the heart of the Variant fleet. "Distance to target?" Mason asked, gripping his chair as the ship shook around him. 5,000 kilometers in closing, VEGA reported. "We need to be within 1,000 kilometers for maximum effect." Reed looked up from her console. "Captain, we won't survive another direct hit." Mason nodded. "I know, but neither will they." As the Defiant closed in on its target, the entire crew braced for what might be their final moments, and humanity's last hope. The Defiant was barely recognizable as a ship anymore. Its hull was torn open in dozens of places, with emergency force fields the only thing keeping atmosphere inside. Systems failed one after another as the damaged vessel pushed toward the Variant command ship. Hull integrity at 23%, VEGA reported. Life support failing in all sections except the bridge. Captain Mason looked at his remaining crew. Dr. Wilson worked frantically to treat Reed's injuries, while still monitoring the alien data. Reed herself had managed to create a makeshift control panel for the modified drive, her hands moving quickly despite her injuries. "Distance to target?" Mason asked. 2,000 kilometers in closing, VEGA answered. Variant ships are converging from all directions. The main screen showed the massive Variant command ship growing larger as they approached. Around it, dozens of other alien vessels moved to intercept the Defiant. Mason opened a channel to the Variant command ship. "Overlord Krell, this is Captain Mason." After a moment, Krell's reptilian face appeared on screen. His yellow eyes were narrowed with both anger and confusion. "You are beaten, human," Krell said. "Your ship is falling apart. Your planet's defenses are crushed. Why do you continue this pointless resistance?" Mason smiled slightly. "Because that's what humans do. We don't surrender, even when all hope seems lost. I'm giving you one chance, Krell. Leave our system now and never return. Krell made a sound that might have been laughter. You offer me terms when you are moments from destruction. Your species' arrogance is remarkable. Not arrogance, Mason replied calmly. Hope, something your people seem to have forgotten after conquering so many worlds without resistance. Mason nodded to Reed, who continued working on the drive controls. You have nothing to hope for, Krell insisted. My fleet will destroy your ship, then your planet. This is inevitable. Nothing is inevitable, Mason answered. That's another thing about humans. We make our own fate. He cut the transmission and turned to Reed. Status of the drive. Ready, Captain, she said. But we need to get closer. At least 1,000 kilometers. The ship shook violently as another gravitational beam struck its side. That was close, Wilson said, steadying herself against a console. Too close. One more direct hit and we're finished, Reed added. Mason nodded grimly. VAGA, all remaining power to engines and forward shields. Give us everything we've got. Acknowledged, Captain. The Defiant surged forward, engines glowing dangerously bright as they pushed beyond safe limits. More hits landed around them as the Variant ships fired continuously, but somehow the human vessel kept going. 1,500 kilometers, VEGA reported. Another hit tore off part of the ship's starboard section. Containment fields failing in sections 3 through 7, VEGA announced. Structural integrity at 14%. 1,200 kilometers. Reed's console sparked and died. She quickly moved to another. Captain, the drive controls are failing. We may only get one chance at this. Make it count, Mason told her. 1,000 kilometers, VEGA announced. We are within optimal range. Mason took a deep breath. Reed, activate the drive. Engineer Reed's hands flew over the controls. Drive activating now. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire ship began to vibrate as the experimental drive core pulsed with energy. The lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency red lighting. Power levels critical, VEGA warned. Core temperature exceeding safe parameters. Is it working? Mason asked, looking at Wilson. She checked her readings. The radiation pulse is building. It's reaching the frequency that should affect their neural systems. On the main screen, they could see the Variant command ship directly ahead. Around it, the other alien ships had stopped firing, as if uncertain what was happening. Pulse reaching maximum amplitude, Reed reported, her voice trained. The drive can't take much more. The vibration throughout the ship increased until it felt like the Defiant would shake itself apart. Now, Reed, Mason ordered. Reed slammed her hand down on the final control. The experimental drive flared with blinding energy, and a wave of invisible radiation burst outward from the Defiant in all directions. The effect on the Variant ships was immediate and dramatic. Their lights flickered and went out. The massive vessels began to drift aimlessly. It's working, Wilson exclaimed. Their biomural systems are shutting down. The wave continued to spread, striking ship after ship in the Variant fleet. None were spared. All drifted powerless in space. But the cost was high. The Defiant's drive core overloaded, sending cascading failures throughout the ship. All systems failing, VEGA reported, its voice distorting. Core breach imminent. Evacuation recommended. Mason hit the ship-wide comm. All remaining crew, get to the escape pods now. Abandon ship. Reed looked up from her dead console. The pods might not get away in time. We have to try, Mason insisted, helping her to her feet. Wilson, help Reed. I'll make sure everyone else gets out. As they hurried from the bridge, Mason stopped at a control panel and entered his command codes. What are you doing? Wilson asked. Making sure our sacrifice isn't wasted, he answered. VEGA, broadcast all our data and recordings to Earth. They need to know what happened here. Broadcasting now, Captain V. Gia replied, its voice growing fainter as systems continued to fail. The three of them made their way through the dying ship, helping injured crew members to the escape pods. With each passing minute, the Defiant shuddered more violently as its core approached critical failure. Finally, they'd reached the last functioning escape pod. Only 5 crew members remained alive out of the original 30. "Everyone in," Mason ordered. "There's no time left." As the others climbed into the pod, Mason took one last look at his ship. The Defiant had done the impossible. It had stood against the unstoppable tide of the Variant and turned it back. The escape pod launched just as the Defiant's core finally failed. The explosion lit up space like a new star, the shockwave pushing the small pod away from the disabled Variant fleet. From the pod's small viewport, the survivors watched as Earth's remaining ships cautiously approached the drifting alien vessels. "They're defenseless," Wilson observed. "The pulse worked even better than we hoped." Reed nodded tiredly. Bell would have been proud. Mason said nothing, still watching the scene. After a moment, his comm unit beeped. "Captain Mason, this is Admiral Chen. We're picking up your escape pod. What's the situation?" "The Variant fleet is disabled," Mason reported. "Their biomural systems are disrupted by the radiation pulse. But it's temporary, maybe hours, maybe days. We need to secure their ships before they recover." "Understood," Chen replied. "Rescue teams are on their way to you now. And Captain, what you and your crew did today, there are no words. Earth stands because of you." 3 days later, Mason stood at a large window in Earth's orbital headquarters, watching as human teams worked to secure and study the Variant ships. Beside him, Reed and Wilson looked out at the same view. "What happens now?" Wilson asked quietly. "Now we prepare," Mason answered. "The Variant will return, eventually. But next time, we'll be ready." Reed nodded. "And we won't be alone. Reports are coming in from throughout the galaxy. Other species that were conquered by the Variant are rising up, now that they know it's possible to fight back." Mason smiled slightly. One human ship stood strong and changed the fate of galaxies. Far beyond the edge of the solar system, the news was spreading from world to world, system to system. The unstoppable Variant had been stopped, the invincible fleet had been defeated, and it was done by a single ship from a small blue planet called Earth. The tide had turned, and humanity had led the way.